There was a morning it happened and you didn't notice. You walked outside the same way you always do. Same door, same time. Maybe you had coffee in your hand. Maybe you weren't fully awake yet. You weren't thinking about the birds. You were just moving through your yard the way you move through your yard every day. And somewhere in the maple tree or on the branch closest to your feeder, a bird watched you come out, and it didn't move. Not because it didn't see you, it saw you perfectly. It had been watching you for longer than you realize. It stayed because it had made a decision, a specific, deliberate, scientific decision about you, about your threat level, about whether you were the kind of person it could afford to stay near. And the answer it had reached, after days or weeks of watching you without you knowing, was yes. You passed. You earned something from a wild animal, and you had absolutely no idea it was happening. That moment, the first morning a bird chose not to flee when you appeared, that is one of the most quietly remarkable things that has ever happened in your yard, and almost nobody who experiences it understands what it actually was. Today, we're going to change that. Welcome to Known by Birds. If you're new here, subscribe before you leave, because what you're about to learn will permanently change the way you walk through your own yard. We go deep into the science of what birds actually know, what they actually see, and what they have already decided about the humans in their world. Stay until the end, because the last thing I'm going to tell you is the one that most people find hardest to believe, and the one that matters most. Most people think birds are either comfortable around humans or they aren't, like it's a personality trait, a bold bird versus a skittish one. That's not what's happening. What's happening is a continuous active calculation that every bird in your yard is running every single time you appear, and that calculation is based on data, real data, collected specifically about you, over time, updated every single day. Researchers call this individual habituation. It's different from general tameness. A bird that has habituated to a specific person has not become tame. It has not lost its fear of humans. It has made a precise individual exception for one person based on evidence. A study from the University of Exeter tracked garden birds across residential yards in the UK over multiple seasons, and what they found was striking. Birds did not generalize their comfort level to all humans based on one safe experience. They maintained distinct individual responses to specific people, staying calm around familiar, predictable individuals while retreating immediately from strangers, even when those strangers moved into the same space and did the same things. The bird on your feeder is not relaxed around people. It is relaxed around you. There is a difference, and that difference is enormous. Here is what happens before the trust. Here is the part that was invisible to you. The first time a new bird encounters your yard, it doesn't settle immediately. It watches from a distance. Researchers who study this describe a pre-habituation phase, a period during which the bird observes the environment and the humans in it before committing to regular visits. During this phase, the bird is tracking several things simultaneously. It tracks your movement patterns. Do you walk the same path every morning? Do you move slowly or quickly? Do you make sudden changes in direction that feel unpredictable? Unpredictable movement registers as threat signature. Slow, consistent, patterned movement registers as background, something to be mapped and then discounted. It tracks your response to them. Do you turn sharply toward them when they appear? Do you move toward the feeder while they're on it? Do you stop and stare? Birds read direct human attention as predatory orientation. A person who looks at them with focused interest triggers the same alert response as a hunting cat. A person who moves through the yard without fixing their gaze on the birds is coded entirely differently. It tracks what happens after you appear. Does the food arrive consistently? Is the water fresh? Does the yard feel the same after you leave as it did before? Birds build what researchers call an environmental expectancy model. They learn to predict what your presence means for the safety and resource quality of the space. And here is the part that will stay with you.
The bird that currently trusts you spent weeks running this analysis on you before you ever knew it was watching. Every morning you went outside and refilled the feeder without looking directly at the birds. Every quiet evening you sat on the porch without reaching toward them. Every time you moved slowly past the hedge without stopping, the bird logged it. You were building a record without knowing you were keeping one.
There is an actual moment when the decision flips. Behavioral researchers who study habituation describe what they call a flight initiation distance, the distance at which an animal decides to flee from an approaching threat. As trust builds, this distance shortens, slowly at first, then faster. With a completely unfamiliar human, a chickadee might flush from 40 feet away. After several weeks of consistent, non-threatening exposure to the same person, that distance can drop to 4 feet, sometimes less. What's significant is that the change is not gradual and invisible. There is a threshold, a day when the bird that would have flushed at 20 feet holds at 10, then 8. Then it doesn't move when you walk past at 3 feet because you have crossed below whatever internal threshold it maintains for you specifically. That morning, when you walked outside and the bird stayed, that was the threshold day. That was the day the accumulated evidence reached whatever level of certainty the bird required. And you just went inside and made breakfast. Dr. Daryl Jones, who has spent decades studying human-bird relationships in urban and suburban environments, describes this process as trust built through consistency, not intention. The bird does not care whether you meant to earn its trust. It does not care whether you were trying. It only cares about the pattern, what you did, how you moved, whether what you offered matched what you promised through your behavior. Intention is irrelevant to a bird. Evidence is everything. Not every bird reaches the threshold at the same speed, and the ones that go furthest might surprise you. Black-capped chickadees are among the most fastest habituators to individual humans in the backyard bird community. Research shows that chickadees in yards with consistent calm human presence reduce their flight initiation distance more quickly than almost any other common species. They are also the most likely to bridge the final gap, to land on an outstretched hand holding seed. But here is what makes the chickadee remarkable in this context. It is simultaneously the most alert bird in your yard. Its alarm call system is one of the most sophisticated vocalizations in North American ornithology. It detects threats with extraordinary precision. A chickadee that lands on your hand is not a chickadee that has stopped being afraid. It is a chickadee that has assessed you so thoroughly, with such confidence, that it has moved you entirely out of the threat category. You are not safe for a predator. You are not safe for a stranger. You are safe specifically and individually in a way that required weeks of evidence to establish. American crows take longer but go further. The trust a crow extends to a specific human, once earned, is documented to persist for years and to be transmitted to offspring who have never personally interacted with that person. A crow that trusts you has effectively decided that its children should trust you too. That is not a small thing. That is the deepest form of individual recognition documented in backyard wildlife science. Northern cardinals occupy the middle ground. They habituate more slowly than chickadees, and their trust is more fragile, more sensitive to breaks in routine. A cardinal that has grown comfortable with your presence will reset significantly if you disappear for several weeks. The relationship requires maintenance in a way that crow trust does not. If the cardinal at your feeder keeps singing when you step outside instead of flushing to the fence, that is a relationship you have to keep showing up for, and it is noticed every time you did.
This part is harder to hear, but it matters. Trust built through habituation is not unconditional. It is a model the bird maintains about you, and models can be updated in both directions. A single sharp, sudden movement near a bird that has just reached the threshold of trust can reset weeks of progress. Not always permanently, but the flight initiation distance expands again. The bird returns to a more cautious baseline, and the rebuilding starts over.
More significantly, breaks in routine erode the expectancy model, a bird that has learned to predict your presence, that knows you appear at 7 a.m., that knows food follows, that has built its morning foraging schedule around your reliability, is destabilized by sudden changes. A week of irregular visits, a feeder that ran empty, a new object placed in the yard without introduction. This is not the bird being dramatic. This is the bird accurately updating its model based on new evidence. You became less predictable. The calculation changed. Researchers studying feeder birds found that yards with consistent human routines supported significantly higher levels of bird habituation than yards where human activity was irregular, even when the total amount of food provided was identical. Consistency was more important than quantity. The birds did not need more from you. They needed to be able to count on what you were already giving.
So here is what you actually did. You showed up. You moved slowly. You didn't stare. You refilled the feeder before it went empty. You sat quietly on the porch some mornings and watched without reaching. You weren't performing trust-building behaviors. You were just being yourself in your yard and the way that you are. And a small wild animal with a brain the size of a walnut ran a weeks-long behavioral analysis on you and concluded that you were safe, that your yard was worth returning to, that you specifically were a known quantity in a world full of unknowns. You didn't know you were earning anything, but you were. And the bird that stayed on the branch when you came outside this morning, that bird made a decision based on evidence, based on you. The next time it happens, you'll know what you're looking at.
Tell me in the comments, when did you first notice a bird stopping to stay near you instead of flying away? Was there one specific moment that you remember? I want to hear about it. And if someone in your life loves watching the birds in their yard but doesn't know any of this is happening, share this with them because knowing changes everything about how it feels. I'll see you in the next one.